The sun hadn't risen in decades until she walked into the light that was meant to kill her. Her skin burned, her blood glowed, and in her hand, she carried the ring of the man she loved and destroyed. But as her body turned to fire, one drop of her blood refused to die, and when it hit the ground, it started to beat. Collision, they thought she ended the curse, but love just rewrote it. The night shift was his kingdom, sterile, lonely, and mercifully dark. The world outside might have called him brilliant. The staff whispered obsessive. But they didn't know the truth that lay behind his still eyes and sleepless nights. Adrian Vale wasn't just a doctor. He was a predator pretending to save the dying. For decades, no, centuries, he had perfected the act. A good man, a healer, a savior. But when the city drowned itself in darkness, he slipped through alleys no camera saw, hunting the wicked with surgical precision. Criminals who preyed on the helpless became his prey. He didn't drink for pleasure. He drank to survive. To quiet the noise. That's what he told himself. The clock on the wall blinked 3:12 a.m., the hour when time itself felt brittle. The ER doors swung open, and with them came the smell of blood. Not the kind that stirred hunger, but the kind that whispered danger. Gunshot victim, a paramedic shouted, bursting through with a stretcher. Female, mid-30s, multiple wounds. Lost a lot of blood en route. Adrian looked up from the paperwork he wasn't reading. The room blurred around him, the clatter of metal trays, the voices, the chaos. All of it faded into that one scent. Her scent. He was moving before he realized it, pushing through the staff with inhuman speed that still somehow seemed human. Get her to trauma room 2, he ordered. The nurse tried to keep up. She's crashing. Not tonight, Adrian murmured. The woman on the table was pale, soaked in rain and blood, her hair tangled like dark silk. There was something defiant even in her unconsciousness. The sharp lines of her face, the faint scar under her lip, the way her hand was curled tight, as if refusing to let go of life. Detective Mara Quinn, the paramedic said breathlessly. Shot twice, chest and abdomen. Detective. The word lodged in Adrian's mind like a thorn. He grabbed a scalpel. Let's work. Monitors screamed. Metal clashed. The smell of iron filled the air. Adrian's hands moved with ruthless precision, clamping, suturing, cutting, healing. His team watched as if under a spell. None of them could ever quite explain how he worked faster than anyone else, how he seemed to know where to cut, when to stop, what to save. To them, it was instinct. To him, it was centuries of dissecting both the living and the damned. He stitched her heart closed. He closed the wound in her side. He did not breathe because he didn't need to. And when the others left, he stayed. Rain hit the window like a ticking clock. The storm outside hummed in rhythm with a faint beep of the monitor. Adrian pulled off his gloves, staring at the woman who should have been dead. Her pulse was weak, but steady. He leaned closer, too close. Her scent hit him again, and for the first time in years, something in his chest stuttered. Her blood smelled wrong. Not rotten. Not human. It was clean, impossibly clean. Warm. Radiant. The scent of sunlight filtered through gold and salt and memory. His mind flashed, a field of burning sky, a voice whispering in a language long forgotten, a memory he'd buried with his humanity. He staggered back, breathless. This wasn't possible. No mortal blood carried that scent. Not since the war of the first night. Not since the old ones had been hunted and burned. The bloodline had ended. It was supposed to have ended. And yet here she was. Dr. Vale? The nurse's voice cut through the haze. He blinked. She stood in the doorway, hesitant. We're closing the wing for the storm. Power might flicker. Should I? I'll stay, he said too quickly. Go. She nodded and left, casting one last uneasy look at him. The door clicked shut. Adrian turned back to Mara. He could hear the faint hum of her heartbeat, steady, human, but layered with something older. He reached for her wrist, fingers brushing skin that was cold but pulsing with strange life. Her blood called to him like a forgotten prayer. He clenched his jaw, fighting the urge rising in his throat. He had fed 3 nights ago, the dealer in the alley, the one whose screams no one heard. He wasn't supposed to be hungry yet. But this was no hunger. It was recognition. Somewhere deep inside him, something ancient stirred, something that remembered the dawn before man walked upright. He stepped back, dragging a hand through his hair. "No," he whispered to the room. "Not again." Thunder rolled through the sky, shaking the glass. Mara's body twitched, and her eyes fluttered open. For a moment, they were human, dark brown, confused, pained. Then, in the brief flash of lightning, they glowed. Amber. Adrian froze. "You're safe," he said automatically, his voice steadier than his mind. Her lips moved, barely a whisper. "Where am I?" "St. Mercer's. You were shot. You're lucky to be alive." Her gaze drifted to him, unfocused but sharp in the way only a hunter's eyes could be. "You saved me." He nodded once. A faint, knowing smile touched her lips. "No one saves anyone without wanting something." His chest tightened. "Sleep. You need rest." She tilted her head slightly, the corner of her mouth curving as if she'd heard something she shouldn't have. Then her pulse slowed. Her eyes closed again. The monitors steadied. The storm outside broke into silence. Adrian sat alone in the dark, staring at the woman who should not exist. Outside, the rain died. Inside, the air seemed to breathe. Somewhere deep in the hospital walls, a generator clicked, a low hum that sounded almost like a heartbeat. He thought of the old legends whispered in the crypts of Prague, of the stories of bloodlines born from angels and demons, pure blood, sunlight blood, the kind that could burn the cursed or cleanse them. He'd spent centuries believing they were myths. He'd killed to forget them. And now one lay before him, bleeding sunlight into his world of shadows. A tremor passed through his hands. Not fear. Not hunger. Something far worse, hope. He leaned forward, his voice barely a breath. "What are you?" But she didn't answer. Outside, lightning tore open the sky, and for a moment the light reflected in the window, not on his face, but behind him. A shadow moved. Watching. Waiting. Adrian didn't turn. He didn't have to. He knew that presence. That scent of old iron and grave earth. "Lucian." The whisper came like wind in his ear. "She's not supposed to exist, brother." And just like that, the rain began to fall again. Welcome my beautiful family and friends to my YouTube channel. Please subscribe, comment, and share this video. Thank you specially for sticking around to this very moment. Now, let us begin. Morning bled softly through the hospital blinds, pale, reluctant, almost afraid to touch her skin. Dr. Adrian Vale stood at the foot of Mara Quinn's bed, watching as the sunlight crawled across the sheets. She should have been dead. By all logic, all medicine, all human reason, she should have been gone. But there she was, breathing, alive. He told himself it was his skill, his training, his speed under pressure. Yet even as those words passed through his mind, he knew they were lies. The truth pulsed faintly under her skin, not human, not mortal, and far too familiar. Adrian glanced down at her chart. Her vitals had stabilized within hours. Her blood count was impossible. The bullet wounds had closed overnight. No scarring, no bruising, nothing but the faint shimmer of something ancient swimming beneath the surface. And when he met her eyes that morning, just for a second, just long enough to question everything, they flashed crimson. "You said I flatlined," she murmured, her voice still hoarse from the ventilator. "But I don't remember dying." Adrian looked up, forcing calm into his face. "You didn't. You went into shock. Near death can cause hallucinations. Fragmented memory. It's not unusual." She frowned. "Hallucinations don't feel real." "They can," he replied, turning toward the window, away from her gaze. "The mind does strange things under trauma." She studied him. He could feel her eyes on his back like sunlight through glass. Warm, piercing, dangerous. "So," she said slowly, "what I saw wasn't real?" Adrian turned, forcing a small smile. "What did you see?" She hesitated.
A man.
Standing over me, eyes like fire. His smile faltered just a fraction. Dreams, he said softly. The mind's way of coping. Mara's lips curved in a faint, skeptical smile.
Right.
Dreams. But she didn't sound convinced. That night, the storm returned. The hospital hummed with the low electric sound of rain meeting glass. Adrian sat alone in his office, the glow of a single desk lamp painting his face in gold and shadow. He'd spent hours reviewing her blood work, searching for a rational explanation, anything that might let him keep believing he was in control. But the screen glared back with the same impossible numbers. White blood cells regenerating at an inhuman rate. Platelets doubling in under an hour. Oxygen saturation off the charts. And the most terrifying part, the faint trace of something that shouldn't exist. The Queen's blood. He whispered the words to himself, tasting the old fear they carried. It wasn't possible. He'd seen that line extinguished centuries ago, buried beneath fire and holy water. The first vampire queen, Selene of the Dawn, was supposed to have died with her court, burned to ash under the Vatican vaults. And yet, the scent of her blood now lingered on his hands. Adrian pressed his palms to his eyes. What have I done? The door creaked open. Mara stood there, barefoot, wearing the hospital gown and the same wary expression she'd had since waking. You shouldn't be out of bed, he said. Couldn't sleep, she replied, stepping into the soft halo of the lamp. I heard you pacing. Adrian forced a smile. Doctors don't sleep much. You're not like most doctors. That stopped him. He met her eyes, brown again, but watching him too closely. What makes you say that? He asked. Instinct. She tilted her head. Also, you move like a cop, quiet, careful, like someone who's hiding something. He almost laughed, but the sound came out wrong. You've been through trauma. Everyone looks suspicious when you're recovering. She nodded, but didn't look convinced. Funny thing, though.
My wounds, they're gone.
Not healing gone. And I feel strong. Too strong. Adrian stood, trying to keep his voice even. That's adrenaline. Post-shock. Is that what you tell all your patients? She asked softly. He froze. I looked at my chart, Dr. Vale, she continued. My blood work. You logged results you never took. Numbers that don't exist. Why are you lying to me? He opened his mouth, but the lights flickered. Both turned as the power cut out. The world plunged into shadow, lit only by the candle burning faintly on his desk. Mara's reflection flickered in the windowpane. For a heartbeat, it wasn't hers. It was something older, with glowing red eyes and a crown of shadows. She gasped, stumbling back. What was that? Adrian crossed the room in a blur. Don't look, he said sharply. It's just the dark playing tricks. Her pulse spiked. He could hear it, the rhythm of her heart echoing through the silence, like thunder underwater. His hunger surged, sharp and familiar, curling in his throat. He forced himself to step back, gripping the edge of the desk until his knuckles went white. Sit, he whispered.
Please.
But she didn't move. Her breathing quickened, her pupils widening until her eyes seemed to burn again. Faint, but there. What's happening to me? She whispered. He wanted to tell her the truth. That she was changing. That he had broken the one rule that kept their kind hidden. That the blood of a god queen now ran through her veins. But the words died in his throat. Nothing, he said. You're healing. That's all. You're lying. Yes, he breathed. The candle flame trembled between them. Outside, the rain turned violent, slamming against the windows like fists. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, long, hollow, and wrong. Adrian's head snapped toward the sound. It wasn't human. A low hum filled the air, faint but familiar. A scent of iron and ash seeped through the cracks of the window frame.
No.
Not yet. They'd already found her. Mara's voice broke through the tension. Adrian. He turned back to her. Her hand was trembling, but not from fear, from strength. The veins beneath her skin glowed faintly, like molten silver. What's happening to me? She whispered again, desperate this time. Adrian stepped closer, his voice low. Listen to me. You need to stay calm. You can't let it in. Let what in? The hunger. Her breath caught. You make it sound like it's alive. It is. She stared at him, and for the first time, she believed him. The flicker of understanding crossed her face. Then the candle went out. The room plunged into darkness. In the silence that followed, Adrian could hear the footsteps outside the door, slow, deliberate, inhumanly graceful. The scent of blood filled the air. His enemies were here. He looked at Mara, her eyes now glowing faintly red, fear and fury mixing in their light, and knew there was no more hiding. He had awakened something that should have stayed buried, and the city would burn before it slept again. The rain had stopped, but the city still bled light into the night, thin streams of red and gold reflected in the puddles along the cracked pavement. Adrian Vale moved like a ghost through the alleys, his coat dark with water and blood. The storm inside him hadn't stopped since the moment Mara's eyes turned crimson. He could still feel her heartbeat, miles away, echoing in his skull like a warning. He'd hidden her in an abandoned church on the outskirts of the city, the last holy place that hadn't burned. He'd told himself she'd be safe there. He'd told himself a lot of things, but none of them drowned out the hunger. It was stronger now, thicker, sharper, calling him toward her blood like a song from the edge of the world. Her scent clung to him, sunlight and fire and something older than sin. It wasn't supposed to exist, and neither was she. He pressed his palms against the cold brick wall and closed his eyes, trying to quiet the beast inside him. That's when he heard it. A voice behind him.
Smooth.
Amused. Eternal. Still pretending to be a man, Adrian? The voice froze his spine. He turned slowly. Lucien stood at the mouth of the alley, the kind of beauty that belonged to statues and nightmares. His white hair glimmered faintly in the half-light. His eyes, molten gold, burned with centuries of cruelty and grace. The old mark of the first house, the serpent coiled around a rising sun, gleamed on the ring he wore. Lucien, Adrian said quietly. I should have known you'd come. Of course you should have, Lucien smiled. You've always been my favorite disappointment. He stepped forward, his boots silent against the wet pavement. Every movement was poetry and menace intertwined. Word travels quickly in the dark, Lucien continued. A mortal woman healed from a mortal wound, eyes burning with Celine's light. I thought the old bloodline had been dust for 1,000 years. But then, his gaze sharpened. I remembered you. Adrian met his stare. I don't know what you're talking about. Lucien chuckled softly. Oh, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You broke the oldest law of our kind. I saved her. You doomed her, Lucien corrected. And now, you've doomed yourself. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, filled with the weight of centuries, of wars and whispers and blood. Lucien reached into his coat and drew out a small silver vial. Inside, a thick crimson liquid shimmered faintly under the alley light. The blood eternal, Lucien said. Yours if you want it. Drink this, and your hunger will vanish. Your power will return, greater than ever. You'll never crawl through gutters pretending to be human again. Adrian stared at it. He could feel the pulse inside that vial, an ancient rhythm calling to every vein in his body. What's the cost? He asked. Lucien smiled slowly. A small one. Deliver the girl. She belongs to the blood that birthed us. The Queen's heir. The world has no place for such power unless it kneels before me. Adrian's jaw tightened. And if I refuse? Lucien's eyes gleamed. Then I tear out your heart before dawn. Simple enough, isn't it? The words hung between them, soft as silk, sharp as knives. Adrian turned away, staring at the flickering streetlight above them. He remembered the way Mara had looked at him before he left, not with fear, but trust. That was the part that terrified him most. She trusted him, and he didn't deserve it. You're still in love with her, Lucien murmured, as if reading his thoughts. How quaint. A vampire in love with his food. Don't, Adrian warned. Lucien stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. You can't protect her, Adrian. You never could. Every breath she takes, the world feels it. Every drop of her blood is a beacon. The others are already hunting. Do you really think you can keep her safe? From us? From yourself? Adrian said nothing. Lucien's tone softened, the devil offering mercy. Give her to me, and I'll make it painless. She'll never remember you. You'll never feel hunger again. You'll walk in sunlight. Adrian looked up sharply. Sunlight. Lucien nodded. A taste of heaven, for a devil who's earned it. The temptation sliced through him like a blade. He could see it, the warmth of morning, the freedom of daylight, the end of centuries of thirst and shadow. To live forever, unshackled by the curse. And yet, behind it all, he saw her face. Mara, lying on that hospital bed. Her eyes trembling open. The way she whispered his name, not as a monster, but as a man. He clenched his fists until his knuckles cracked. Lucien watched, smiling faintly. You're trembling, he said, because you already know your answer. Adrian turned, the hunger burning beneath his skin. You don't know what I'll do. Lucien's expression darkened, the charm slipping, the ancient wrath awakening. You think this is a choice? You think you still have free will? He took a step forward, firelight flickering in his eyes. You owe your life to me. Every drop of blood in your body was given by my hand. You were my creation. Maybe once, Adrian said softly, but not anymore. Lucien's eyes narrowed. Then you choose death? Adrian hesitated, and in that hesitation, he felt the beast within him stir, whispering, take the deal. He imagined her scent.
Her blood.
The warmth of it calling to him in the dark. Lucien leaned closer, his words silk and venom. You can't save her, Adrian. You'll end up drinking her dry. You always do. Adrian met his gaze, eyes full of defiance, pain, and something almost like faith. Maybe, he said quietly. But if I do, it'll be because I loved her, not because you ordered it. For the first time, Lucien's smile vanished. He stepped back, his face a storm of restrained fury. So be it, he whispered. When the sun rises, your ashes will feed the earth, and she will be mine anyway. With that, the shadows behind him folded inward. The night swallowed him whole. Adrian stood alone, the echo of Lucien's voice still burning in his skull. He looked down at the vial on the ground, the blood eternal, glimmering like a heart under glass. He picked it up, held it. For a moment he almost drank. The promise of sunlight trembled on his tongue. Then he smashed it against the wall. The blood hissed as it hit the stone, steaming in the rain. Adrian turned his face toward the distant horizon, where the first pale trace of dawn was beginning to bleed through the storm. He whispered to the empty street, if I die before morning, at least it'll be for something human. And then, without another word, he disappeared into the dark, back toward the church, back toward the woman whose blood might damn or save them both. The church burned. Smoke coiled into the night like dying prayers, devouring the stained glass windows that once caught the moonlight. Flames crawled along the pews, turning devotion into ash. Outside, sirens wailed, and the sky pulsed red, not from the fire, but from the war that had finally come to the city. And in the center of it all, Mara Quinn stood trembling, her hands slick with someone else's blood. She didn't know whose it was. An hour ago, she'd thought she was safe. The church had been quiet, the kind of quiet that feels sacred. Adrian had kept to the shadows, his face pale under the candlelight as he bandaged her arm, pretending the world wasn't falling apart. But lies have a scent, and Mara had followed it straight into hell. She found the truth in the basement, hidden behind the altar, a crypt disguised as a confession booth. Inside were names carved into the stone, centuries old. Names of the dead. Names that matched the hospital's missing persons files. At the center of the wall, painted in something darker than ink, were the words, "The blood remembers." And below that, a symbol she recognized from her dreams. The serpent coiled around the sun. When she turned, Adrian was there. He didn't look surprised. You weren't supposed to find that, he said quietly. You mean you weren't supposed to get caught, she shot back. His eyes were shadows. You don't understand. No, she said, stepping toward him, the anger burning through her fear. I think I do. You've been lying to me since the moment I woke up. Since you saved me. You were dying. And you decided to play God. Adrian said nothing. The candle between them flickered, throwing his face into shifting halves, one human, one monster. What are you? She whispered. He hesitated. The thing you should have never met. Say it. His voice dropped to a rasp. A vampire. The word hit her like a knife. Not because she didn't believe in monsters, but because she'd trusted one. She stepped back. And me? He didn't answer. She lunged forward, shoving him. What did you do to me? You were dying, he said again, his voice breaking now. I didn't mean to, I gave you a part of me. It wasn't supposed to wake the old blood. It wasn't supposed to wake her. Mara froze. Her. Adrian looked at her the way a sinner looks at a cross. Selene. The first queen. Her blood runs in you now. You are her heir. Mara laughed, but it came out sharp and broken. That's insane. Then how do you explain your wounds healing overnight? The fire in your eyes? The voices in your dreams? She wanted to deny it, she needed to. But the truth had already taken root, whispering in her bones. She remembered the nightmares, the woman crowned in shadow, bathed in blood and moonlight, whispering her name. Mara, the sound of it still echoed in her head. I didn't want this, Adrian said softly. I wanted to save you, not turn you into a weapon. A weapon. He nodded. There's a prophecy. The queen's blood will return in human flesh. When it awakens, it will choose to end the curse or to enslave the world. Mara's throat tightened. End the curse? You mean? Destroy every vampire alive, he said. Including me. The silence between them was brutal. Mara stared at him. The man who'd saved her life, lied to her, damned her. The man she couldn't stop wanting. You knew this, she said quietly. And you still helped me. He met her eyes, something raw flickering there. Because you deserve a choice. Before she could answer, the air split open with the sound of glass shattering. The front doors exploded inward. Lucien stepped through the smoke, flanked by his court, pale soldiers in black armor, eyes burning like coals. Ah, he said, his voice smooth as silk. Family reunion. Adrian moved in front of Mara instantly. You shouldn't have come here. Lucien smiled. On the contrary, this is exactly where I belong. The queen's blood calls, and I always answer when royalty beckons. Mara's hand went to her throat. You're Lucien. He bowed slightly. At your service, my dear. Though I admit, I expected you to be taller. Stay away from her, Adrian growled. Lucien sked. Still pretending to be her protector? You should be thanking me. I gave you life, and now I offer you purpose. Mara glared. You burned the city. You killed people. Lucien's eyes gleamed. Collateral beauty. The world needed a little fire to wake up. He turned to Adrian. Last chance. Deliver her, and I'll let you watch the sunrise. Adrian's answer was simple. He stepped forward, fangs bared. Lucien sighed. So dramatic. The church erupted. The soldiers moved first, shadows tearing through pews, claws catching the light. Adrian met them head-on, faster than her eyes could follow. The air filled with the sound of bone and fire. Mara ducked behind the altar, her pulse hammering. But then she saw the old carvings glowing beneath the smoke, words she couldn't read, symbols bleeding light. Her blood, Selene's blood, was reacting. The prophecy wasn't myth. It was alive. Her hand brushed against the carvings. The ground trembled. Adrian turned, shouting her name, and then the ceiling exploded. Flames roared down as Lucien appeared through the fire, his face illuminated in gold. There it is, he whispered, staring at her. The blood of gods. He lunged. Adrian intercepted him midair, their collision shaking the church to its bones. The two immortals crashed through stone and light, claws and fangs and fury tearing the world apart. Mara could only watch, terrified, furious, alive. Every heartbeat screamed his name. Then, amid the chaos, Adrian looked at her, just once. Run. But she didn't. Instead, she grabbed the iron crucifix from the altar and drove it into the glowing carving on the wall. Light exploded outward, tearing through the flames like a scream. Lucien reeled back, his skin burning where the light touched. What have you done? Mara's voice was steady now, calm and storm. You said I was the queen's heir. Then I'm taking back her power. Lucien roared. The fire twisted, collapsing the roof. Adrian caught her, dragging her through the smoke as the church gave way. The night outside was chaos, sirens, explosions, the city in ruin. Lucien's laughter followed them through the flames. You can't fight destiny, Adrian. The blood always wins. They stumbled into the rain, soaked in firelight and ash. Adrian looked at Mara, her eyes burning red, her veins glowing faintly beneath her skin. She wasn't human anymore. Neither of them were. She turned to him, voice shaking. You said I have a choice. So tell me, Adrian, what if I choose wrong? He looked at her, rain washing blood from his face, firelight dancing in his eyes. Then he said softly, we burn together. Behind them, the city screamed. Ahead, the prophecy waited. And above it all, the moon cut through the smoke like a blade. The night smelled like iron and smoke. From the hospital's rooftop, Adrian Vale watched the city burn, crimson reflections rippling across the glass towers, thunder crawling beneath the clouds like a living thing. Sirens wailed below, swallowed by the wind. In the distance, the old cathedral collapsed in flames. The war Lucien had promised had finally arrived. But this was no longer a city. It was a battlefield, and the hospital had become its last stronghold. Every door was barricaded. Every hallway flooded in flickering light. The mortuary freezers were filled with stolen blood, ready for what was coming. Adrian's army was gone, his allies dead or turned. He had nothing left but her. Mara. He could feel her heartbeat echoing down the corridor, steady, defiant, maddeningly human. She appeared at the far end of the rooftop, her hair damp with rain, her eyes reflecting the inferno beyond. Her skin shimmered faintly, the mark of the queen's blood burning just beneath the surface. They're coming, she said. I know, Adrian replied, his voice low, calm, too calm. The eastern perimeter's gone. They'll breach within the hour. Mara stepped closer, her voice trembling. Then we run. No. Her breath caught. You can't stop them alone. I'm not stopping them, he said, looking out at the firestorm. I'm delaying them. Long enough for you to escape. Mara's heartbeat faltered. You're not serious. Adrian turned to her then, and for the first time, she saw the truth in his eyes. Not the monster, not the savior, but the man caught between both. This is my fault, he said softly. Lucien's war began because I broke the law. Because I couldn't let you die. You saved me, she whispered. I cursed you, he said. You were supposed to live a human life. Sunlight. Coffee in the morning. Laughter that didn't echo off tomb walls. And now look at you, hunted by gods and ghosts alike. Mara's jaw tightened. You think I blame you for that? You should. She took another step toward him, rain streaming down her face. You think dying for me makes this right? It's all I have left to give. For a moment, neither spoke. The rain hissed on the flames below, turning the rooftop into a battlefield painted in red and silver. The storm pressed close, thunder in their bones, wind in their blood. Mara's voice broke the silence. You told me once that vampires can't love. I lied. He moved closer, his hands trembling as they brushed her cheek. Her pulse jumped under his touch, the rhythm he'd memorized, the one that kept him sane. I love you, Mara, he said, the words heavy as confession. I've loved you since the night I first smelled sunlight in your blood, since I realized I'd rather burn than feed. Tears mixed with the rain on her skin. Then don't send me away. You don't understand. I do, she said sharply. You think love is sacrifice. But I'm done being saved. If I die tonight, it'll be beside you. The storm howled around them, the city crying out below. And for one suspended heartbeat, just one, the chaos stopped. Adrian kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was centuries of hunger, guilt, and devotion colliding in a single moment. Her blood sang beneath his lips, her warmth searing through him like holy fire. For the first time in his cursed life, he felt human. When they broke apart, she was shaking, not from fear, but from power. The mark on her neck glowed crimson. "You can't fight this alone," she whispered. "Then we die together," he said. She smiled faintly through the tears. Good. The first explosion hit the eastern wing. Windows shattered. Smoke surged through the corridors. The army had arrived, Lucian soldiers, dozens of them, eyes glowing in the dark, their movements silent and inhuman. Adrian's fangs bared. "Stay close." They moved together, shadow and flame. He ripped through the first wave like a storm given shape, claws and steel and fury. Mara followed, her movements growing faster, sharper, guided by instincts she didn't yet understand. Her blood was no longer sleeping. Every cut healed before it bled. Every breath burned brighter than the fire around them. The hospital trembled under the assault, alarms screaming, floors cracking. Adrian kicked open a door to the main lobby, his coat torn, his eyes glowing red. Dozens more waited there, Lucian's creatures crawling from the smoke. "Get behind me," he said. But Mara didn't. She raised her hand instead, and the air rippled. The firelight twisted toward her like it recognized its master. A wave of crimson energy burst outward, consuming the first row of attackers in light. Adrian froze. "Mara." She looked down at her hands, trembling. "I don't know how. You don't need to. Just feel it." He grabbed her hand. The world slowed. Together, they moved, one heartbeat, one rhythm. His blade sang, her power burned. Blood and flame collided in motion too fluid to be human. Through it all, the hospital became their cathedral of war. Adrian fought like a man who'd already accepted death. Every strike was poetry, every motion a confession. Mara moved beside him. No longer prey, no longer lost. She was fire reborn. The night outside turned crimson. Rain hissed as it met the flames, steam curling around them like smoke from a ritual. Then came him. Lucian walked through the broken glass doors, untouched by the chaos. His eyes glowed like twin suns. His voice carried over the screams. "Touching," he said. "Truly. The monster falls for the lamb. I almost envy you, Adrian." Adrian stepped forward, sword dripping with blood. "She's not your queen." Lucian smiled. "She is my queen. She always was. You think you found her, but she found you." Mara glared through the smoke. "You're lying." "Am I?" Lucian raised a hand, and the rain froze midair, each droplet suspended in shimmering stillness. "Ask yourself, my dear, who dreams in your blood? Who whispers when you sleep?"
Celine does not die. She waits.
"And you, my precious heir, are her return." Mara's vision blurred. The world tilted. Images flooded her mind. An ancient throne, a voice in her bones, a promise made in eternity. When the blood remembers, the world burns anew. She stumbled, her pulse spiking. Adrian caught her before she fell. "Don't listen to him," he whispered. "You're stronger than she ever was." Lucian's expression hardened. "Enough." He moved faster than sight. Adrian barely blocked the first strike. The clash of steel sent sparks into the rain. The air itself shuddered under their strength. Mara fell back, clutching her chest, fire blooming under her skin. The queen's power was waking, and it hurt. "Adrian," she screamed. He turned, and in that instant, Lucian's blade pierced his side. Adrian gasped, blood spilling like wine. "No!" Mara's scream shattered the rain. The power inside her erupted, a ring of fire exploding outward, hurling Lucian across the room. The flames consumed everything, walls, ceiling, soldiers. She fell to her knees, holding Adrian as the fire raged. His blood stained her hands. "Stay with me," she whispered, voice breaking. He smiled weakly. You were right. I shouldn't have sent you away. Don't you dare say goodbye. He brushed her cheek, smearing blood and ash. Then fight for me. End this. End him. Outside, lightning split the sky. Lucien rose through the smoke, his smile returning, slow and cruel. Then let the night end, he said. And the final battle began. The storm had not stopped. Lightning tore the sky open again and again, casting the ruined hospital in pale blue light. Rain fell in sheets, hissing against burning steel, washing away the blood but never the memory of it. In the heart of the chaos, beneath the broken ceiling and flickering lights, Mara knelt beside Adrian, her hands trembling over the wound that would not close. Lucien's blade had gone clean through his chest. The ancient vampire lord stood a few feet away, his silhouette outlined by flame. His sword dripped black-red blood, Adrian's blood, and his voice, when it came, was almost tender. Look at him, my dear. Your savior. The man who thought love could conquer blood. Mara didn't answer. She pressed her hands harder against the wound, whispering words that broke into sobs. Adrian's breath rattled, shallow and wet. His eyes found hers, glowing faintly, fading with each second. Mara, his voice was barely air. Run. She shook her head violently.
No.
Don't you dare say that again. He smiled, the ghost of a smile, cracked and weak. You were never meant for this world. Not like me. I'm not leaving you, she whispered. Lucien's voice slid through the smoke. Then let me make it simple. He raised his sword, and from the wound in Adrian's chest, blood began to rise, glowing faintly, suspended between them like liquid fire. The blood of a vampire, Lucien said, his eyes gleaming. Drink it, Mara. Take his gift, take his curse, and become what you were born to be. Or, he tilted his head, smile widening. Watch him burn into ash before your mortal eyes. The rain roared louder, thunder shaking the shattered windows. Mara froze. The scent of Adrian's blood filled the air, sharp, metallic, ancient. Her instincts screamed to taste it, to claim it. But her heart rebelled. I won't, she whispered. Lucien laughed softly, stepping closer. You will, because you love him, because you cannot stand to lose what little light is left in your cursed soul. Adrian's hand twitched, reaching for her. Don't, Mara. Promise me. Stop talking, she said, tears streaming down her face. You're going to live. He smiled faintly. Not if it costs you your soul. Lightning flashed. Lucien moved like a phantom, striking faster than sight, his hand wrapped around Mara's throat, lifting her off the ground. You think you have a choice, he hissed. You don't. Your blood is destiny. Your love is the key. The Queen's heart beats again in your chest, and it demands sacrifice. Mara struggled, claws tearing into his wrist, but his grip only tightened. You can't kill me, she gasped. No, Lucien said with a smile. But I can make you me. He threw her down beside Adrian, the floor cracking beneath her. Blood smeared across her palms, warm and slick. Adrian coughed, crimson bubbling at his lips. She caught his face in her hands. Stay with me, please. Mara, his voice broke. If you drink, you'll lose yourself. She stared down at him, at the man who had saved her life, lied to her, broken her heart, and somehow, impossibly, made her feel alive again. The firelight flickered across his pale skin. Rain dripped through the holes in the ceiling, dotting his face like tears. Don't let me die for nothing, he whispered. And that was the moment something inside her cracked. Her hand hovered over his wound, shaking. The scent of his blood filled her lungs, rich and dark and eternal. The hunger clawed at her throat, whispering that this was right, that this was power, that this was love. Lucien's voice coiled around her like smoke. Drink. Mara looked down into Adrian's eyes and whispered, Forgive me. Then she bent forward and drank. The first drop hit her tongue like fire. It burned down her throat, igniting every vein, every nerve. The world exploded into color, lightning white, blood red, storm black. She felt the universe collapse and rebuild inside her heartbeat sinking with something vast and ancient. Her scream ripped through the night. Glass shattered. The fire froze midair. The rain turned to mist. Lucien staggered backward, shielding his face as light poured out of her body. Not sunlight, but something older, crueler. The blood of the first vampire Queen had awakened. Mara rose slowly from the floor, her eyes burning crimson. The wound on Adrian's chest sealed instantly, but his body was fading, turning to ash from the inside out. "Adrian," she whispered. He looked at her one last time and smiled. "You're beautiful." Then he was gone. Ash fell between her fingers, dissolving into the rain. Mara's scream tore through the ruins, grief twisted into rage, love consumed by hunger. The lightning above bent toward her, drawn to her fury. The air itself seemed to kneel. Lucien watched, wide-eyed, whispering, "Impossible." Mara turned toward him, the air trembling under her gaze. When she spoke, her voice echoed with 1,000 others, layered and divine. "You took everything from me." Lucien tried to retreat, shadows swirling around him like armor. "You don't understand what you've become. That power will consume you." She moved faster than thought. One moment she was across the room, the next she was before him, her hand plunged into his chest. "I don't care." Lucien screamed as his body began to crumble, veins bursting with fire. She leaned close, whispering into his ear, "Burn." The flames obeyed. Lucien's body erupted, collapsing into ash and light. The storm outside wailed in answer, as if mourning the end of an age. When it was over, Mara stood alone amid ruin, fire reflected in her eyes, blood on her lips, the city silent beneath the rain. She looked down at her hands. They shook, not from weakness, but from the unbearable weight of what she had become. The taste of Adrian's blood still lingered on her tongue. His voice echoed in her head. "If you drink, you'll lose yourself." She fell to her knees, the rain soaking her hair, her tears lost in the downpour. Around her, the ashes of Lucien and Adrian mingled, hunter and hunted, lover and damned. The piano in the broken hospital lobby began to play, one soft note at a time, the wind pressing the keys. Mara closed her eyes. The city around her bled light. She could feel every heartbeat in a mile's radius, every living pulse, every drop of blood calling her name. The hunger inside her roared to life, boundless and merciless. And somewhere, deep in that hunger, a whisper rose, the voice of the Queen. "Now, child, rule." Mara lifted her head, eyes glowing through the storm. She was no longer human, no longer victim. She was the blood of a vampire. And the world would never be the same again. The city had stopped dreaming long ago. For decades, it knew only night, a half-world of shadow and rain where the living whispered beneath neon lights and the dead walked with purpose. But on this morning, for the first time in a lifetime, the sky broke open. The sun rose. Its light poured over rooftops, slow and golden, touching the shattered glass and the ruins of what once was a hospital. It slid down the faces of burned-out cars and over the river, where the water turned to molten gold. People crawled from their shelters, blinking into the brilliance, whispering prayers to a god they'd forgotten. Somewhere, church bells began to ring, hesitant at first, then wild, desperate, alive. And through that light walked Mara Quinn. Her boots echoed on the cracked pavement, slow and steady. The long coat she wore was torn and blackened at the edges, streaked with ash and blood. Around her neck hung a chain, and on it, Adrian's ring. Smoke rose from her skin. Not thick, not instant, just wisps, curling like ghosts in the morning light. Her face was calm. Her eyes glowed faintly gold, like twin embers struggling to live in the brightness. Each step forward burned, but she didn't stop. She could feel the heat crawling up her arms, feel the sunlight cutting through her like truth. The hunger inside her screamed, clawing against her ribs, demanding she run back to the dark, to the safety of shadow and blood. But she had made her choice. She had killed the monster that made her. She had lost the man who saved her. She had burned the city down and survived the ashes. Now, all that was left was to face the light. Mara stopped in the middle of the street. The wind lifted her hair, carrying with it the faint smell of rain, the last trace of a storm that had ended her old life. Around her, people watched in silence. Some whispered her name. Others knelt, unsure if she was angel or demon. She didn't blame them. She wasn't sure either. Her reflection stared back at her from a puddle. Eyes gold, veins faintly black beneath the surface, her skin a map of fading scars. In her hand, she turned Adrian's ring over and over, feeling its cool metal against her burning flesh. He had worn it the night he died. The night she became everything she swore to destroy. Adrian, she whispered. The sound of his name almost broke her. It drifted into the air, fragile and small, swallowed by the light. And then she heard him. Not in her mind, not in memory, but in something deeper, something that trembled between worlds. His voice, low, calm, almost a whisper of wind. Love is the only blood that never dies. Her eyes closed. The world around her blurred. The city, the people, the light. All that remained was his voice, echoing through her bones. She had thought love was her weakness, that caring for him had doomed her. But now she understood. It was the only part of her that was still human, the only thing the curse hadn't devoured. Tears slipped down her cheeks, hissing as they hit her burning skin. The sunlight grew stronger, more merciless. Smoke rose from her shoulders in ribbons now, curling into the air like incense from an offering. The edges of her coat caught fire, the flames glowing faintly gold instead of red. Still she smiled, because she could feel him, in the light, in the warmth, in the way the world breathed again.
He wasn't gone.
Not really. He was in the sunrise. A small child stepped forward from the crowd, a boy no older than 10, clutching a wooden cross. His mother gasped, reaching for him, but he slipped free and stood before Mara. "Miss," he asked softly, are you an angel?" Mara looked down at him, her eyes softening. "No, sweetheart," she said, her voice gentle and hoarse. "Just someone trying to make things right."
The boy looked up at the sky.
"You made the sun come back." She smiled faintly.
"No.
"I just stopped keeping it away." He held out the cross to her, but she shook her head.
"Keep it.
"You'll need it more than I do." Then she stepped past him and into the full heart of the sunrise. The pain was immediate. Her body flared with light, every cell screaming as the sun devoured the darkness that made her. Her skin cracked, golden fire spilling through. The city seemed to hold its breath. Mara fell to her knees, clutching the ring in her fist. For a moment, she thought she heard Adrian again, closer this time, his voice warm with pride. "You did it, Mara." She smiled through the agony. "Not yet." Her body began to dissolve, not into ash, not into dust, but into light. Threads of gold unraveling into the wind. The people watching didn't see a monster burning. They saw something else, a woman becoming something more. And as the light consumed her, one last tear slipped from her eye, a drop of blood, bright as a ruby, falling to the ground. It hit the pavement softly and pulsed.
Once. Twice.
Then it began to glow. A heartbeat, faint but steady, echoed from the drop. The sunlight seemed to bend toward it, drawn like a prayer to flame. The ground around it shimmered, a circle of warmth spreading through the cracks in the stone. The boy who'd spoken to her stepped forward again, staring down at the glowing drop. "Mom," he whispered, "it's alive."
And it was.
The blood pulsed again, rhythm steady, like something waiting, something remembering. As if love itself refused to die. By the time the light faded, there was no sign of Mara. Only her ring lay in the dust, gleaming faintly beside the heartbeat in the stone. The city was silent. Then, slowly, one by one, the bells began to ring again. The sun climbed higher, scattering the last shadows. And somewhere, beyond what eyes could see, two souls found each other in the light. Her curse was broken. her love eternal, her legacy rebirth. And in the warmth of that new dawn, the question lingered, one that would haunt every survivor, every child who grew beneath that sun. If love is the only blood that never dies, what would you burn to keep it alive? Thank you for watching the story to the end. Please subscribe, comment, and share this video. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.